Richtstahl hailing frequencies are open.
Okay, we're on.
The opinions expressed in tonight's podcast are those of the individuals speaking. They do not necessarily reflect the views of HarrisFilm Productions or its other crew members.
This is Steve Harry Harris and the HarrisFilm crew. Roy Ivey, Matt Arnold, and Ken Mays, and Belle sometimes. She's already got fan mail, you know.
She probably knows it.
HarrisFilm has entered the 2024 Showrunner Awards, and were 2 of 27 entries. I'm not sure exactly what specific awards that they put themselves in for. So tonight we're going to watch a film called Fallen Heroes.
I did have a question whether they were using stock shots from the actual movie or whether they were doing original VFX.
Everything's original VFX by Samuel Calkins.
And he did a damn good job.
You betcha. Here we go.
For over 200 years, starships have ventured out into the unknown to expand our understanding, meet new civilizations, and boldly go where no one has gone before. From James T. Kirk to Rachel Garrett, the captains and crews of the Enterprise have led the Federation into that unknown. Of the 6 starships named Enterprise, many would consider the 1701D to be the most influential. Completed in 2363, her 8 years of service under the command of Captain Jean-Luc Picard saw the Enterprise explore new horizons and develop the Federation's understanding of the universe. 1 year ago, she served her final mission. Today, we look back to understand what happened from a different point of view.
My name is Ensign Sam Harriman. I served on the Enterprise D as part of the engineering staff. If the warp engines break, I'm sent to get us cruising again.
Ensign Harriman's perspective is not that of a senior officer, but instead the lower decks, the crew's perspective.
I'd served on the Enterprise for just over a year. Before that, I had a stint at Utopia Planitia, and before that, the Discovery. I'll never forget when I got the transfer orders. Eating a sandwich at my favourite spot at Planitia. The visitor domes had a view of the whole orbital dry docks. It may not have been my chosen assignment, but seeing all those ships come to life day after day, that was special. The orders came in, I didn't quite believe them. The Enterprise had made a reputation for itself, the flagship, Captain Picard, and I know my commanding officer at Planitia thought my skills were being wasted, and after a few months I was itching to get back on the starship, even if some wanted to keep me grounded. I got the message, packed my things, and was out on the next transport. I'd never set foot on a Galaxy class. Well, not a finished one. I'd worked on the USS Venture, but they hadn't even got carpet in, and starships don't quite pop without a carpet. My first day, the atmosphere was something totally different. I felt this impression. Every single officer knew how lucky they were to be there and wanted to do their best. Yes, at Planitia we all worked hard, but this just felt special. I got comfortable there pretty quick. Commander LaForge was a fantastic team leader, and being a generalist meant I did a bit of everything. He also liked to keep tinkering, so we pushed systems and got some remarkable results.
The Enterprise D's crew was almost as famous as the ship. Stories of Starfleet's only android, Commander Data, or first Klingon in Starfleet, Lieutenant Commander Worf, moved across the Federation. Thousands of officers applied every year, but even with one of the larger crew complements in the fleet, most current officers chose to continue their assignments aboard. As such, opportunities were few and far between to find a position on the flagship.
I know I was hand-picked for the Enterprise, despite the issues on my record, but I think it shows I exemplified what Starfleet is trying to be. Okay, but being honest, my family name, Harriman, probably helped get me in the door, but I earned my place once I was there.
Their 7th year saw the Enterprise deal with new and varied encounters. From a Romulan stalemate over illegal technology to a convergence of enterprises from across the multiverse, her missions are legendary, and many thought the Enterprise could survive anything.
We lost the Enterprise at Viridian 3, Dr. Soren and the Duras sisters. But the story doesn't start there. It actually starts with another Enterprise, and another Harriman.
In 2293, the Enterprise B, under the command of Captain John Harriman, was launched. This was the next Enterprise after Kirk's long tenure on both previous ships to carry the name. Captain Harriman was picked because of his varied skill set, and while being his first command, his record was impressive.
My great-granddad, captain of an Enterprise, family hero. If you're not a student of history, then you may not look past that first mission and see his amazing career. Yes, first time in the centre seat, and we lost Kirk. But it wasn't John's fault, or his crew's. It was a no-win scenario, which somehow they managed to escape. Just not all of them.
Captains Kirk, Scott and Commander Chekhov were aboard the Enterprise B during that shakedown cruise turned rescue mission. They were observers, but once in a crisis they each rose to the occasion to save the ship and its crew.
It's called the Nexus, an energy ribbon with a powerful gravimetric field that moves through the galaxy. Most of the time it's a don't fly into it kind of anomaly that's harmless, but if you get caught, your ship won't survive. For Dr. Soren, this was his intent, of a sort.
The Nexus has been reported to transition someone's consciousness into a higher plane of reality. This non-corporeal dimension is of the person's own making and exists outside of the normal flow of space-time. Someone caught in the Nexus could remain indefinitely unless they choose to leave.
Captain Picard was the only one who had any direct experience, and Commander Data told me that he had a positive experience and could see, for some, the appeal. That brings us to Dr. Soren.
Dr. Tolian Soren, an Elorian scientist and refugee of a Borg attack, was first encountered aboard the Lecule, a freighter which got caught in the Nexus in 2293. Captain Picard reported that he had spent the subsequent 78 years finding a way to return to the Nexus and live out his life there at any cost.
I had just returned from the White Star seminars. We were near the Amagosa Observatory. I think the plan was to visit anyway, but we got a distress call. Pushed the engines. They were under attack. Every second counted. The Enterprise gets calls for assistance often, so I didn't really think anything of it at first. I was more concerned by the slow shift in uniforms, honestly. White Star was almost totally the new uniforms, but back at the Enterprise, I changed back into the old one. It was only once the scientists were beamed aboard and I was off duty in 10 forward that I noticed something. You'd think, after such an ordeal, the survivors would have banded together, but they steered clear of Dr. Soren. He was different.
Officially, Dr. Soren was working with the scientists to help develop metaphasic shielding. Commanders Worf and LaForge discovered he was instead working on a trilithium solar probe to destabilise a star.
Next thing I see, the star's gone cold and a shockwave is hurtling towards us. I head down to engineering, only to be told Commander LaForge is still on the observatory. 4 minutes. That's all we had before everything in this system would be destroyed. It's chaotic. No one knows what's happening, but Lieutenant Commander Cygnus took the reins. Get the warp drive hot and ready to go. When the captain orders warp, we had to be ready as ever to jump.
Dr. Soren had launched a solar probe to prove his research correct. This was the next step in his plan, and once successful, he was beamed away by a Klingon bird of prey.
I had so much adrenaline. I was watching the sensors. We were maybe 30 seconds from being hit. Cutting it very fine, Captain. Next thing we asked, where's Geordi? Commander Riker came down about 30 minutes later and told us that Dr. Soren had taken him. I was so angry. I saw Soren. I sensed he was no good. If I'd done something, Geordi wouldn't have had to suffer what he did to him.
With no way to track the bird of prey, the Enterprise crew had to work out Dr. Soren's plan and where he would be going.
They worked out Dr. Soren's destination and we headed there at maximum warp, 9.6. That order almost never comes in because of the stress to the ship. But this time, I didn't care. We had to rescue Geordi.
Captain Picard and Commander Data had discovered Soren was planning on destroying the star in the Viridian system. This would cause the Nexus to intersect with Viridian 3 and allow Soren to enter the ribbon without the risk of a ship being destroyed.
One man's hunt for peace and eternal life was going to kill 230 million people on Viridian 4. He was a refugee of a Borg attack, lost his people, planet, purpose. That's all horrible. And peace sounds mighty nice after all that. But what he was doing was monstrous. Once we got into orbit, the Klingons revealed themselves.
Lursa and Beto Duras, Klingon renegades who famously started a civil war for control of the Klingon Empire in 2367, were now reduced to a D-12 class bird of prey, yet were still plotting to gain control of the Empire. It is assumed that they had intended to use Soren's trilithium weapon as their tactical advantage in another coup attempt. Both sisters were lost around Viridian 3.
They knew their ship was no match for the Enterprise, but they also knew they had something we needed. Soren. He was able to mask his life sign on the planet, and maybe we could have found him in time, but that's something we didn't have. Instead, Captain Picard offered a prisoner exchange, Geordi for himself. Well, they agreed quickly, knowing we wouldn't have risked the captain and attacked their ship. It's a bold move, but the Duras family have that reputation. We got Geordi back. He seemed okay, groggy. He didn't really remember what they did to him. That worried me. But he said he was fine and coming back to work, seemingly unfazed. Geordi is one of the bravest people I know. But I should have realised something was wrong.
Lursa and Betel, with the help of Dr. Soren, had gained remote access to Commander LaForge's visor. Everything he saw was being sent to the bird of prey, and as soon as they had a tactical advantage, they took it.
We were blindsided. In the seconds it took to work out what was happening, we'd taken some serious damage. We returned fire, but they'd got their shields ready for that. Our fire did nothing. Soon their hits reduced our phaser power to nothing more than pot shots. I was sent to try and fix them, but with every new hit, more systems would go offline. It didn't feel like a battle. It felt like a death by 1,000 cuts. Deep cuts. The Enterprise was failing all around me. There was nothing I could do. I saw EPS conduits exploding across the ship. Not just that, but hull breaches with each impact. Every rumble I felt through the ship was people dying. There were a lot of rumbles.
The Galaxy class, while very capable, was designed to rely on its shields, as are all classes of starship. Without that source of protection, a ship's hull cannot withstand direct weapon impacts. The Enterprise's crew saw the damage mounting, but it was Commander Riker who had the idea which would turn the tide.
Commander Riker, the amazing officer that he is, realised that an ionic pulse could affect the bird of prey. Data did the modifications in superhuman time, and just like that, their cloak activated. I'm betting their hearts sank. I watched power shift as a torpedo was fired.
Lursa and Betor may have been defeated, but the damage they had inflicted on the Enterprise was severe.
I rushed back to engineering only to find chaos, smoke, sparks, and Geordi saying the magnetic interlocks had been ruptured. That was it. You can't fix something like that. 5 minutes until a warp core breach. From winning the battle to losing the war. Just like that. Less than 5 minutes to get 1,000 people into the saucer. The turbo lifts weren't enough, so civilians were crawling through Jeffries tubes. The Enterprise had families aboard. Parents and children separated all across the ship. We had to trust each other and know that no one would be left behind. The engineering staff were fast-tracked to the saucer's engineering control. We had to make sure the impulse drives, shields, all systems worked. I'd never actually been in that auxiliary section. Never had a need, but staring at my colleagues, knowing only a few decks down was an antimatter-fueled bomb just seconds from going off, I never worked harder in my life.
While separations are rare, splitting the saucer to use as a lifeboat has proven time and again to be an invaluable resource. With all remaining crew successfully evacuated, Commander Riker ordered the separation.
The team had done it before, but never like this. All or nothing. Seconds left. we separated. Then, we held our collective breaths. I remember the countdown so vividly. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I was scared. I was right to be. The shaking. I remember the shaking. Viridian's gravity had got hold of us, and with primary stabilizers offline, helm offline, staying at my console, red lights flashing, sparks flying everywhere. I thought I was going to die. I really did. Just from a physics point of view, we were screwed. Geordie was still with the civilians, but in auxiliary engineering, we had to work through the fear. It really was up to us. We still had access to systems, and if we could repair anything, maybe not everyone would have to die. I told Gomez to focus on power distribution, Giles to work on reinforcing structural integrity. I could tell Data was trying to reroute auxiliary power to thrusters, so I worked on my panel, did everything I could. And we got it working.
A planetary crash is unpredictable by its very nature, and the survival of the Enterprise's crew speaks to their ingenuity and bravery in the face of adversity.
We were meters away from the tree line. That's all we could do. I got under my console and braced for impact. Then, just as quickly as it had started, it was over. The Enterprise was in tatters, but as I breathed in, I felt relief. We'd made it.
Despite the crash, there were no further casualties. Many members of the crew were injured, but Dr. Crusher went straight back to sickbay. She and her staff worked tirelessly until the rescue fleet arrived to stabilise every officer who needed it.
I stepped out into the ship. The lights were low, or there was just blackness. As I moved further out, doors had been blasted apart. Sunlight was coming through broken windows. This was my home. My life, and now it was gone. I remember the smell, burned metal, and yet sweet from the trees outside. I looked at the officers around me, same fear, anger, relief, and all I could do was nod. No words, nothing could convey what we were feeling. I started moving to my quarters. Wanted to see the damage. In the corridor outside, I saw this little girl, Bella. She and her brother were just sat there on the floor. I walked up. They didn't know me, but knew the uniform. Gave me a hug. When you're at your station, focusing on the big picture, you forget about the small one. Literally. Every life saved. I helped to do that. I hugged them tight and told them we'd be okay. Rescue was on the way and they were safe. Not sure they fully believed me, but I did get a small smile out of them.
The Enterprise distress beacon had already been detected by a deep space relay, and Starbase 19 had assigned several ships to pick up the Enterprise's crew and salvage the ship.
My quarters were in okay shape, actually. Everything was on the floor, scuffed or dented.
The floor?
I was able to find my family's journal in one piece. It was then I got the signal on my comm badge. Geordie was organising a detailed survey of the ship. I volunteered and, well, just like that, I was back at work. I didn't quite know just how much damage the Enterprise had sustained. For a second, I hoped we could get her spaceworthy again, but no. She was gone for good. Viridian was her last mission. And once Captain Picard returned to the ship, we knew those hundreds of millions on Viridian 4 were safe. Mission accomplished.
The fleet were able to rescue the entire crew and salvage their personal belongings. It was determined that 3 nearby California-class starships would remove the saucer from the surface. It would then be tracked back to Starbase 19, where salvage could begin.
I was looking out of the window at the stars flying by. It was peaceful. The problem was the Farragut. a Nebula class, made from the same parts as a Galaxy. I was assigned guest quarters, almost identical to my own. Corridors the same, turbo lifts the same. The first morning I woke up and forgot what happened. Then the weight of the memory crashed down again. It was hard. Those feelings were fleeting, however. We reached Starbase 19 and the debrief started. You don't lose the flagship without an inquiry, but it was short-lasted. Soon I was on the next ship back to Earth. It had been so long since I'd been home. With all that we'd been through, seeing that blue marble again, it was good.
The crew of the Enterprise was given several weeks' leave while Captain Picard and Starfleet considered their next move.
The thing is, I couldn't stay on Earth. I couldn't go to Risa. I didn't want to be idle. My Enterprise family was torn apart, and when Geordi contacted me with his plans to work on the new Enterprise E, I had to be there.
There were several Sovereign-class ships being built at the time, with one in late-stage construction. Captain Picard chose to move forward with a new Enterprise, and it was decided it should represent the cutting edge of Starfleet design.
When I saw the specs for the Sovereign class, I was impressed. She was not going to be as comfortable as the D, but she made up for it in other ways. Given what we just went through, I was all for the upgrades in offensive and defensive systems.
The Sovereign was a direct response to the Borg threat, and along with the Defiant class were going to lead the charge if another assault on Earth came.
And that takes us to today. We're just about to launch the Enterprise E. I almost can't believe it. Reliving those memories with you, it feels so... Well, it feels like another life almost. I've done so much these last months, worked with the team to get this amazing new Enterprise ready. Captain Picard, all of us really, we wanted to move forward together. Almost the whole crew came over to the E, and without the families, we were able to expand the crew complement. I helped install the new warp core. Engineering is huge. I'm not surprised we've doubled the staff. A brand new ship to push to its limits. I just hope not as she was designed to fight the Borg. No, thank you.
Captain Picard, as his reputation suggests, is ever stoic and strong in the face of adversity. He moves forward with this new Enterprise with confidence and hope, an inspiration to us all.
A Harriman on a third Enterprise. I know John would have been proud. My parents sure are. Right after this, I report to Commander LaForge to help with final checks. Do I have butterflies? Yes. Yes, I do. Good ones.
Stardate 49827.5. The USS Enterprise E, under the command of Captain Jean-Luc Picard, launches from the San Francisco Fleet Yards over Earth. The seventh starship to proudly share that name. Long may it soar among the stars. This has been a Memory Alpha documentary, and we want to thank Ensign Sam Harriman for sharing his story.
Samuel Cocking's film.
Mm-hmm.
I get their costumes the same place I do. First impressions?
Pretty good. They did a good job maintaining continuity with the events of the actual movie. They didn't create any yachties or anything.
Yachties?
Yet another Trek inconsistency.
Yeah. I love that. All right.
Right choice there, but yeah.
So
I don't know if I care. I've seen a lot of this documentary style. I'm getting to think it's being overused.
Okay, that's fair.
But that it's well done. It's well executed for this, and I think this one voice. Well,
I think it would have been better if they'd have had multiple actors, each one recounting the events from their own perspective.
See, that's
instead of just one guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you got a narrator and one guy.
And instead of it being a documentary by Memory Alpha, if it had been like a debriefing,
that might have been an interesting angle
with Starfleet interrogators going over them, saying, "Okay, now what happened from your perspective?"
Mm-hmm.
And then you could actually have different views because not everyone would have had the big picture on what was going on, and so
you could have interviewed 2 or 3 people.
And then at the very end, a scene of 2 of the investigators going over it and discussing, well, what do we have here? You know, are the events as was reported, or is there something more here?
Right.
And deciding to close the book on the issue.
What do you think, Matt?
I think the same way with it, and the the investigators and all have, even the characters were should have been several other characters, like add 3 or 4, maybe 4 others to give their insight on it, and it would have made it more interesting, but it was still good. Everything was still good like it is, but I still give it 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, I give it 2 thumbs up. I think they have a story they want to tell, but there are no physical sets, or there are limited partial sets and limited actors, limited number of actors that are available. And I don't know if you realize how many hoops we jumped through in November just to get Klingon Krampus done, but Ken and I were already working on 2 other projects that we thought were going to be edited and released before January. And that didn't happen because we ran into a bunch of problems. So, I mean, what Samuel has accomplished, what his whole group has accomplished, is fantastic. Okay? 2 thumbs up, Samuel. But constructively, and we know you're dealing with the same problem we are, with limited number of actors, limited number of assets. It would have still been interesting if you could have had a couple of more actors and a couple of more sets, maybe. Like Ken said, maybe it was an inquisition or a debriefing by some muckety mucks at Starfleet. I mean, after all, the ship was crashed. There's got to be an investigation. So,
well, I just finished watching the Apple Plus series, Masters of the Air, and when they would send up these enormous flights of B-17s, the planes that returned, the ones that survived, the entire crews would immediately be told to report to interrogation.
Right.
And they would sit with an interrogator who would go over every detail of the mission. What went right, what went wrong, what did you see when you saw this other plane go down, how many parachutes did you count? You know, that way they could account for everything.
And what kind of German aircraft were around, and what were they doing?
Yeah.
And all that. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's very intensive. It's not I mean, of course, this didn't happen during a war, but
it also served several purposes. One was if we counted that there were 5 parachutes that were spotted, then we know there were 5 people that got out of the plane alive. So those are potentially 5 people that are either working their way back to the underground to get back, or they've been captured and are sitting in a POW camp.
Right.
Secondly, by interrogating the entire crew, they could determine whether or not there was cowardice on the part of the captain or the
Or
co-pilot.
anybody. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you fall out of the battle prematurely? And basically getting everyone's story straight. And
Yeah.
because they're interrogating them individually, if anyone tells a different story, then there's further questions to be raised about that.
Right.
So
They're in isolation.
it keeps the crews honest. They don't have time to, unless
Get their
they're
story straight.
Yeah.
Right.
So I would see Starfleet as having something similar. If a ship's lost, you run through an entire interrogation procedure. Which
it would be some kind of an internal
if you
review.
if you go by TNG, you also have to include the fact that the captain's going to automatically be court-martialed.
Yes.
But the court-martial isn't to, like a criminal proceeding, it's to determine whether or not there was culpability on the part of the captain.
Right.
And
he wasn't even
Picard,
on board the ship, but yeah.
When Picard lost the Stargazer, he was court-martialed for that.
Right.
And he was acquitted at the court-martial. But he felt that the prosecutor was a bit too zealous in his case. So he had
standard procedure.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, they would be relieved of duty also. So the captain and the XO would have both been relieved of duty.
Now, personally, I've always felt that the writer of that episode didn't really understand what the purpose of a court-martial was.
Right.
It's like the ship is lost. You don't immediately bring criminal charges against the captain. You do an investigation. Mm-hmm. And based on the results of the investigation, you then might bring criminal charges if evidence of a crime surfaces.
Right.
The way they did it in TNG, they acted as though, well, the fact the ship was lost was a crime, therefore the captain's going to be charged. And it's like, no, that didn't make sense to me.
Okay, so Deanna was driving the ship. Okay, she was at the helm when the thing crashed, and there's this running joke that every time she drives the ship, they crash. Okay, so I mean that wasn't even talked about in this whole video, and I find it a little strange, Samuel, that you mentioned that this guy is lower decks, and he's calling the chief engineer by his first name. That's like, I don't know. That's not proper. That's not proper discipline within the ranks. So,
he should have been referring to him as Commander LaForge.
Probably Commander LaForge or our chief engineer, who I highly esteem, or something to that effect. Whatever's the proper British way of doing that type of a thing in the Royal Navy. That's the way this guy should have been acting. So, I would think that Starfleet, especially during an investigation or even a historical event like this is being recorded, that the ensign would be more respectful. But maybe that's just me with military experience. I don't know. So anyway, you still get 2 thumbs up. All right. Right, Roy? What do you say? 1.5, 2 thumbs?
Give it 2 thumbs up. Yeah, I'm just saying it's something I've noticed of late, that the documentaries have been used a lot.
Right.
4 stars out of 5, 7 stars out of 10.
Something to that effect. Yeah.
4.5. We'll go 4.5.
4.5 out of 5. Okay.
Now, if you break it down into individual categories, the acting, I would give it a good solid 8 stars. Special effects, I'd give it 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I have to agree.
Writing,
it depends on which part.
6.5 or 7 out of 10.
Yeah. The actor was believable. Okay, it was like he was actually reliving everything that he was talking about, and I give him a 10 out of 10 on acting. But as Ken was saying, the writing was it was on point in one spot here, and then it was kind of straying a little bit in another spot. And to me, that is a little disconcerting, especially for such a long feature. I mean, what was it, 20 minutes or something like that? And as a documentary, it gets a little long. There, we're second guessing what happened in the editing room and that type of thing. So, just from our perspective, this is what we would have suggested. I mean, it could have probably been a tighter cut, as Roy would like to say. Roy is the best one out of this group right now with fresh eyes, who can say, okay, yeah, what you wrote's great, and what's on the screen is good, but it can be great, and this is how you do it. I'm not offering Roy's services or anything, but I'm just saying maybe you needed another fresh set of eyes in your own group who could help you make those difficult cuts so that it's more concise, more impactful. You did a great job. Everything's cool, right, Roy?
I'm a big fan of the book.
Absolutely.
It's not meant to be personal.
Yeah.
It's just a general observation, and it may be unfair to mention it in context with his film, because obviously he's pioneered a lot of this documentary work.
We're not just tearing you apart just for the sake of tearing you apart. Take what we say, bring it on board, and apply it to your new project.
So this particular film was called Fallen Heroes, and we give it 2 thumbs up.
So, in closing, congratulations. And we are looking forward to your next film. What'd you think? Like, comment, subscribe, and share.
Well, we hope you've enjoyed our show. We try to do something to make your day better every time we show up. Good night from Roy, Matt, and Ken Mays with Bell. Have a good night. Come see us again soon.
Hailing frequencies are closed. Transmission complete.